On a Saturday morning in early October 2005, Vicki Johnson took Mary and I to the Old City, the historic section of Philadelphia. With everything in close proximity, it was a short walk to the points of interest. Our first stop was the home of Ben Franklin, which included the nation's first post office. Our next stop was St. Mary's Church, which was founded back in the mid-1700s. Christ Church Cemetery was the final stop for the heroes of that time, including Ben Franklin. Constitution Center was an informative and hands-on experience. Everything you need to know about the Constitution was available. The fun part included walking among the attendees, among the statues. It was very cool. We made our way to the main attraction, Constitutional Hall. We weren't able to join a tour, but had access to the Assembly Room, the birthplace of the Constitution. Representatives from 12 of the 13 states were present. George Washington was presiding, and the likes of Ben Franklin, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson were in attendance. It was a special time and a special place. I had not taken many pictures, so I went online to see what I could find that might enhance the story. I discovered a video that captures the events that took place in that room. I hope you enjoy it.
That 13 fractious states chose to unify rather than go their separate ways. It was largely due to the leadership of a small group of visionaries who understood the lessons of the past and sought a new representative form of government. A government made too powerful could lead to tyranny, but without power to protect the rule of law and the liberties of the people, anarchy. The trick was finding the right balance. The colonies had united under the Articles of Confederation. The bond formed under the Articles was weak at best. The Confederation Congress had no power to tax or coordinate foreign policy. It was increasingly evident that this weak government was no match for the diverging interests and priorities of the individual states. It was a union in name only. Amending the Articles of Confederation required unanimous support of the 13 states, an impossible hurdle. They called for a national convention to be held in Philadelphia in 1787. Throughout May 1787, delegates from all over the Union arrived in Philadelphia. Luminaries like Benjamin Franklin and rising stars like Alexander Hamilton were in attendance. There were 7 former governors, including Virginia's Edmund Randolph, and jurists like Pennsylvania's James Wilson. And there were relative newcomers, like James Madison. Eventually, 55 men would serve at the convention. And chairing this body, George Washington. Now, they needed to secure the peace. Foreign powers had predicted the American experiment would fail. This convention sought to prove the world wrong. It was thanks to James Madison's diligent note-taking that we even know what took place. Smaller states, which had enjoyed equal representation in the existing government, feared they would lose sovereignty to the dominance of the larger states. The larger states wanted representation based on population. James Wilson reminded the delegates, "Can we forget for whom we are forming a government? Is it for men or for the imaginary beings called states?" Then Roger Sherman of Connecticut arrived with a proposal. It would come to be known as the Great Compromise. Sherman proposed a legislature split into two bodies. One would allocate representatives based on the state's population. The other would treat states as equals. Here was the birth of the House of Representatives and Senate. The last challenge. Would the American people accept a powerful executive? The Articles of Confederation lacked one. Each state could overrule the others. There was nobody to transcend states' interests and represent the nation's. Hamilton and Madison argued a powerful national leader was necessary. Madison's proposal, the Virginia Plan, offered a powerful single executive balanced by a representative legislature and a judiciary. The public had been kept in the dark for months. What had the greatest minds of their country, their beloved General Washington, conceived? By the time the Constitution was ready for signing, 42 of the original 55 delegates remained in Philadelphia. Washington signed first. What they signed contained a mere 7 articles, 7 pieces that together formed a new government. The first 3 defined the branches of government, creating checks and balances between them. 3 more outlined the relationship between the states and the federal government, along with the process for making amendments. And the 7th established rules by which the new Constitution could be adopted. Some favored the new Constitution as a necessity. They became known as Federalists. Others, like the patriot Patrick Henry, were skeptical. The Constitution had no guarantee of individual rights, like a free press and protections against unlawful prosecution. And they feared the executive could become a tyrant. Ratification came quickly. Delaware was first, voting unanimously in favor on December 7th. 5 more states followed over the next 2 months. But 6 states were far from the 9 required. Even worse, the largest and most powerful states, New York and Virginia, were deadlocked. Could there really be a United States without New York and Virginia? In Virginia, Patrick Henry and George Mason were the most vocal opponents of ratification, fearing its lack of safeguards for individual liberty. James Madison, with the quiet support of Washington, argued fervently in support of the Constitution. 2 more states voted to ratify. Just one was needed for the Constitution, the new federal government, to be born. Who would be the 9th? Virginia's convention had compromised. They asked that a Bill of Rights be added to the Constitution, and they had voted to ratify by a margin of just 10 votes. Unbeknownst to them, just 4 days earlier, New Hampshire had become the 9th state to ratify. They had ensured the United States would be born. Now, by its vote, Virginia had ensured the United States would live. Washington's influence carried the government. The new government now a certainty. And with the endorsement of Virginia, the remaining states, including New York, voted in favor. Rhode Island would be the last holdout, joining the Union in 1790. After ratification, the question now turned toward just who would lead this new government. It seemed a foregone conclusion that George Washington would be its first president. He had presided over the Constitutional Convention. He was trusted, beloved. Many had agreed to support ratifying the new charter because they believed Washington would assume a leadership role. He decided he would re-enter public life if the voters wanted him. On April 14, 1789, the answer came by way of a messenger from Congress. It had taken several months to complete the tally. George Washington had been elected president by a unanimous vote of the electors. Thanks to the leadership of George Washington and his fellow delegates, the former colonies were truly unified into one United States, equipped with a representative government that was both balanced and empowered.